The man, the myth, and the military truck. How one wild impulse buy saved a community. History has a habit of surprising us. Sometimes heroes wear armor and ride horses. Sometimes they wear suits and sign important papers. And sometimes, very rarely, they wear rain-soaked t-shirts and drive a gigantic former US Army truck they bought on a whim. This is the story of Nick Sissa, a Houston man who became an unexpected hero during Hurricane Harvey in 2017. He didn't plan for fame. He didn't plan for heroism. Honestly, he didn't even plan on using the military truck he bought. Yet through a mix of strange intuition, mechanical readiness, and a whole lot of diesel, Nick rescued more than 300 people. Proving that sometimes history is shaped by the most unlikely decisions. When an impulse buy isn't an iPhone case but a military truck. Everyone has experienced an impulse buy. Usually it's something normal, a snack, a book, or a shirt you regret almost immediately. But Nick's impulse buy was not normal. In 2016, he went to a military surplus auction and saw something that nearly no average person would consider. A massive M1078 Light Medium Tactical Vehicle, LMTV. The kind of truck that looks like it could flatten a boulder and then politely drive over its remains. Nick looked at this beast of a machine and decided he had to have it. For $6,000, he bought the entire truck, roughly the price of a mid-range refrigerator. Except this refrigerator weighed over 22,000 pounds, ran on diesel, and was designed for US Army missions. When he called his wife Martha to tell her what he had done, she thought it was a joke. She was pregnant with their first child, which made his timing, let's say, adventurous. Neighbors were confused. Friends were confused. His mother-in-law hated the truck and wanted it gone. Nick barely drove the thing. He mostly kept it parked outside their house in Houston's 3rd Ward. Like a giant metal lawn decoration. But Nick wasn't entirely reckless. He studied the vehicle manuals and kept the truck maintained. After all, he was a construction manager, which meant he already knew his way around machinery. He might not have known why he needed the truck, but he seemed instinctively prepared to handle it. And one day, that preparation would matter more than he could imagine. Why this truck looked ridiculous, but was exactly what Houston needed. The M1078 LMTV wasn't just a big truck. It was a serious piece of military engineering. A 2.5-ton, 4x4 tactical cargo truck, the M1078 has huge ground clearance, a sealed drivetrain, full-time all-wheel drive, a central tire inflation system, the ability to ford deep water, up to 3 feet normally, up to 5 feet with a fording kit. In other words, it was designed to go where regular vehicles couldn't. Mud, rubble, stormwater, even semi-flooded roads. All of this made the truck extremely rare, extremely tough, and, during a natural disaster, extremely valuable. At the time he bought it, everyone, including his wife, thought it was completely unnecessary. But then came Harvey. The storm that changed everything. In August 2017, Hurricane Harvey hit Houston with devastating force. Rain poured down non-stop. Roads became rivers. Homes flooded. Entire neighborhoods vanished under brown, rushing water. While most families stayed home, hoping the water wouldn't reach their doors, Nick felt something different. A deep tug in his gut, a push to go out and help. His wife didn't understand at first. "Where are you going?" she asked. "I don't know," Nick answered honestly. He filled the truck's tank with 55 gallons of diesel, climbed 5 feet up into the cab, and drove straight into the storm. A monster truck in a drowning city. Nick didn't have a plan. But the moment he left home, one seemed to form around him. His first rescue came quickly. A family with a medically fragile daughter was stranded in rising water. They were close to a hospital, but the streets were underwater and impossible to cross safely. Nick pulled up in his giant military truck like a scene from a disaster movie. He loaded the family in and delivered them to the emergency room doors. After that, the mission grew. He found firefighters trapped after their fire truck stalled. He rescued families from second floors and rooftops. He carried dozens of people from a church that had begun to flood. At every stop, people stared up at the giant machine. Appearing out of the rain, its massive wheels cutting through the water like it was nothing. He became so recognizable that police and National Guard personnel gave his truck the call sign Bama 1, a tribute to his Alabama roots. 8 hours a day, 3 days straight. Nick didn't stop. For 3 consecutive days, he drove the truck for 8 hours or more. Often through pounding rainfall so heavy he could barely see in front of him. He worked side by side with Houston firefighters, navigating currents strong enough to sweep people away. His wife later explained his determination perfectly. As a construction manager and a husband soon to be a father. His wife later said, "He's a planner, a survivor." And she was right. Nick was prepared in every way that mattered. By the end of the storm, Nick and Bama 1 had helped rescue more than 300 people. A number confirmed again and again by survivors and local authorities. A folk hero returns. Days later, when the National Guard fully took over official rescue operations, Nick finally returned home. But when he eventually drove back into the Meyerland neighborhood, where he had saved so many people, something amazing happened. People recognized the truck immediately. They walked out of ruined houses. They waved. They shouted his name. Some hugged him. One woman called him handsome and demanded a photo. Another said, "You saved my family. My grandchildren." Even in the middle of destruction, a moment of joy returned to the streets whenever Bama 1 rolled by. History isn't only written by generals. The story of Nick Sissa reminds us that history is not always about armies or presidents. Sometimes, it's about ordinary people who rise to extraordinary moments. Nick wasn't a trained first responder. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't someone with a formal rescue plan. He was simply a capable, mechanically knowledgeable construction manager. A man with a massive army truck. A person who refused to stay home when others needed help. Sometimes the biggest heroes begin with small, strange choices. Like buying a giant military truck that everyone else thinks is useless. But history has room for strange heroes. And during Hurricane Harvey, Houston found one in Nick Sissa.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. On a whim. Definition: doing something suddenly, without careful planning or deep thought. Often based on a momentary feeling or impulse. Example: he bought the old military truck on a whim, without fully thinking about how he would use it. 2. Intuition. Definition: the ability to understand or sense something immediately, without needing logical reasoning or clear evidence. Example: her intuition told her that something was wrong, even though everything seemed normal. 3. Surplus. Definition: an extra amount of something that is more than what is needed or used. Example: the military sold its surplus equipment after it was no longer required for active service. 4. A deep tug in his gut. Definition: a strong emotional or instinctive feeling that urges a person to act, often connected to conscience, fear, or responsibility rather than logic. Example: he felt a deep tug in his gut, telling him to leave the house and help others during the storm.
Comprehension questions. 1. Who is the main person featured in the story? Answer: the main person is Nick Sissa, a Houston resident who rescued more than 300 people during Hurricane Harvey. 2. What unusual item did Nick buy on impulse? Answer: he bought an M1078 light medium tactical vehicle, LMTV, a large US Army military truck. 3. How much did the truck cost at the military auction? Answer: the truck cost $6,000. 4. Why did Nick's wife originally think he was joking about the purchase? Answer: because the purchase was so unusual and she was pregnant at the time, making it seem unlikely that Nick would really buy a giant military vehicle. 5. What is one major reason the M1078 LMTV was useful during the hurricane? Answer: Its high ground clearance and deep water fording ability allowed it to drive through flooded streets that ordinary cars could not handle. 6. What important skills did Nick have that helped him operate and maintain the truck? Answer. He was a construction manager, giving him strong mechanical skills and the ability to understand and study the truck's manuals. 7. What motivated Nick to leave his home during Hurricane Harvey? Answer. He felt a strong urge to go out and help people, even though he didn't know exactly where he was going. 8. Who was the first group Nick rescued with his truck? Answer. He helped a family with a medically fragile daughter who needed to reach a hospital. 9. How many days did Nick spend driving through flooded streets rescuing people? Answer. He drove for 3 consecutive days, about 8 hours each day. 10. Approximately how many people did Nick rescue during the storm? Answer. He rescued more than 300 people. 11. What nickname did responders give Nick's truck during the rescue efforts? Answer. The truck was given the call sign Bama 1. 12. How did the residents react when Nick later returned to their neighborhood? Answer. They recognized the truck immediately, came out to thank him, hugged him, and praised him for saving their families. 13. Why is Nick's story considered a good example of citizen heroism? Answer. Because he was an ordinary person with no official rescue training, who still stepped up to help strangers during a dangerous crisis. 14. What lesson does the article suggest about how history is made? Answer. That history isn't only shaped by famous leaders, but also by everyday people who make brave decisions in critical moments. 15. How did Nick's ridiculous impulse buy end up becoming life-saving? Answer. The military truck's design, deep water capability, strength, size, and durability made it the perfect vehicle for navigating flooded streets and rescuing trapped residents.